The cargo freighter Meridian's Hope drifted through the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, its hull scarred from countless runs hauling rare Earth minerals back to Earth. Captain Elena Vasquez had been running this route for 12 years, and today felt like any other until the scanner picked up something that shouldn't exist. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, called out her navigation officer, Chun Wei. Configuration unknown. Elena squinted at the display. The ship was elegant, crystalline, nothing like the utilitarian vessels humans built. It moved with purpose, closing distance faster than should be possible. Hail them. Static filled the con channel, and a voice melodious and precise. Primitive vessel, you will comply. We are the Colliery Educational Authority. You carry developing minds that require proper guidance. Elena's blood chilled. Her cargo hold contained more than minerals. It held the Henderson family, relocating to the Europa colony. 2 parents, 3 children aged 6 to 14. This is Captain Vasquez of the Meridian's Hope. You have no authority here. These are Earth citizens under. The ship's systems died. Lights flickered, gravity fluctuated, and Elena watched helplessly as her vessel was drawn into the alien ship's docking bay. The colliery vessel's interior was pristine white, filled with geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. The beings that boarded were tall, humanoid, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer with its own light. Their leader, who introduced himself as Instructor Keth Vanos, spoke with the patience of someone explaining basic concepts to a child. Your species raises offspring through emotional chaos, he said, examining the terrified Henderson children with clinical interest. Love without structure, creativity without discipline. These young ones will be educated properly on Colliery Prime. They will thank us when they achieve their full potential. Elena lunged forward, but found herself paralyzed by some invisible force. You can't just take them, they're children. Precisely why they require intervention, Kethvanos replied. Your attachment is the problem. On Colliery Prime, they will learn logic, efficiency, purpose. They will become better than their genetics suggested possible. The Henderson parents screamed as their children were led away, their cries echoing in the sterile corridors. Elena memorized every detail the way young Sarah Henderson looked back, the tears streaming down her face, the way her brother Tommy tried to be brave, the way baby Marcus reached for his mother. Hours later, Elena's ship was released, drifting powerless as the colliery vessel vanished into hyperspace. The Henderson parents were catatonic with grief. Chun Wei helped Elena restore power, his hands shaking as he worked. What do we do? He whispered. Elena stared at the stars where the alien ship had disappeared. In her mind, she saw Sarah Henderson's face, heard her frightened sobs. Something cold and patient was taking root in her chest, not rage, something far more dangerous. We go home, she said quietly, and we tell them what happened. But Elena was already thinking beyond that. The colliery expected humans to react with violence, to rage and attack. They thought they understood humanity's weakness, their chaotic emotions, their desperate love for their children. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Asterisk the emergency. Session of the United Earth Council convened in Geneva, exactly 47 hours after the Meridian's Hope limped back to Earth. Elena stood before the assembled representatives, her testimony steady despite the tremor in her hands. She had told this story 6 times already to Port Authority, to Earth Defense, to the Colonial Administration. Each time, the response was the same. Outrage, demands for military action, calls to mobilize the fleet. We cannot let this stand, thundered Admiral Morrison, his fist striking the podium. They've taken our children. This is an act of war. Councillor Zhang leaned forward. Our intelligence suggests the colliery possess technology centuries beyond ours. A direct confrontation would be suicide. Then what do you propose? Morrison shot back. We negotiate? Ask nicely for our children back? Elena watched the debate rage, feeling something shift inside her. These politicians and military leaders were thinking like humans, emotional, reactive, predictable. The Colliery had counted on this response. In the gallery, she noticed Dr. Sarah Chun Williams, the Zenab psychologist who had been studying the limited Colliery communications they'd intercepted over the years. The woman's expression was thoughtful, calculating. After the session, Elena approached her. You look like you have an idea, Elena said. Dr. Chun Williams nodded slowly. I've been analyzing their broadcasts, their cultural patterns. The Colliery see themselves as enlightened educators. They genuinely believe they're saving our children from our primitive parenting methods. So they expect us to react with violence. They're prepared for that. But what if we don't? Elena felt that cold patience grows stronger. What are you thinking? The Colliery have orphanages, rehabilitation centers, facilities for their own troubled youth. Children who don't fit their rigid societal molds. Dr. Chun Williams pulled up holographic displays showing Colliery social structures. What if instead of trying to take our children back by force, we started offering to take theirs? The idea was so audacious it took Elena's breath away. Adopt Colliery children? Think about it. They took our children to improve them through their methods. We offer to take their defective children and improve them through ours. It's not war, it's cultural exchange. Elena thought of Sarah Henderson's face, of Tommy trying to be brave, of baby Marcus reaching for his mother. And then what? Dr. Chun Williams smiled, and Elena saw something patient and dangerous in that expression. Then we show them what human love can create. We raise their children with warmth, creativity, emotional intelligence. When those children grow up and return to Colliery space, they'll carry something the Colliery never expected. Proof that there's another way to live. The plan was insane. It would take decades to bear fruit. It required a level of restraint and strategic thinking that most humans couldn't manage. But Elena found herself nodding. We don't just want our children back, she said softly. We want to make sure this never happens again. Exactly. We're not going to defeat the Colliery. We're going to transform them, one child at a time. Elena looked out at the stars visible through the council chamber's windows. Somewhere out there, human children were being raised by aliens who thought love was weakness. Soon, Colliery children would be raised by humans who knew love was strength. The war had begun, but it would be fought in nurseries, not battlefields. Asterisk Ambassador. Zara Okafor stood in the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel Harmony, watching Colliery Prime grow larger in the viewport. The planet was beautiful in its precision crystalline cities arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Atmospheric processors maintaining optimal conditions. Orbital platforms positioned with mathematical accuracy. It had taken 3 years to arrange this meeting. 3 years of careful diplomatic overtures, of proving humanity's civilized intentions, of convincing the Colliery that Earth's proposal was genuine. They're granting us docking permission, reported communications officer. Park, Bay 7 Alpha. Zara nodded, checking her diplomatic pouch one final time. Inside were the documents that would change everything. Formal adoption papers, medical records, educational assessments, and most importantly, holographic profiles of human families eager to provide homes for Colliery children. The Colliery delegation met them in a sterile conference room that looked more like a medical facility than a diplomatic space. Instructor Keth Vanos, the same being who had taken the Henderson children, led the group. His silver skin gleamed under the harsh lighting. Ambassador Okafor, he said, his voice carrying that same patient condescension Elena had described. Your species continues to surprise us with your adaptability. We're here to discuss the welfare of children. Zara replied smoothly. Both human and colliery. Indeed, we have been observing your reactions to our educational interventions. Most primitive species respond with violence. Your restraint suggests evolution. Zara bit back her first response. Everything depended on playing this perfectly. We've come to understand your perspective. You believe our children benefit from your structured approach to development. Correct. Emotional chaos creates inferior minds. Logic and discipline create superior ones. Which is why we'd like to propose an exchange. Zara activated her holographic display. We understand you have youth who struggle with your educational methods, children who exhibit emotional instability. The colliery exchanged glances. Instructor Kethvanos leaned forward. You speak of our rehabilitation subjects, those who resist proper development. We'd like to offer them homes. Human families who specialize in working with emotionally troubled children. Think of it as a comparative study. Can human methods succeed where colliery methods have struggled? For the first time, Zara saw genuine interest in the alien's eyes. You propose to take our defective youth and attempt to correct them through your chaotic methods? We prefer to call them alternative development approaches, Zara said carefully. If our methods fail, you lose nothing. If they succeed, you gain valuable data about alternative educational techniques. The discussion continued for hours. Zara presented case studies, research data, detailed proposals for monitoring and evaluation. The colliery were fascinated by the concept of humans voluntarily taking what they considered damaged goods. Finally, Instructor Kethvanos spoke. We will permit a limited trial. 12 subjects, ages ranging from equivalent to human 8 to equivalent to human 16. All have proven resistant to proper educational intervention. And in exchange, you will provide detailed documentation of your methods and results. If your approach proves effective, we may consider broader implementation. Zara nodded, hiding her smile. Of course. We'll begin with families who have experience with challenging children. What the colliery didn't know was that every family on Zara's list had been carefully selected. Former teachers, child psychologists, artists, musicians, people who understood that what the colliery called defective was often just creativity, curiosity, and emotional depth, struggling to break free. As the meeting concluded, Zara caught a glimpse of the 12 young colliery who would be part of the exchange. They looked sullen, defeated, their natural luminescence dimmed by disappointment. One, a girl who appeared to be about 12 in human years, met Zara's eyes briefly. In that moment, Zara saw something that made her chest tighten. Hope. The girl's name was Zefkira, and she was about to become the first colliery child to learn what it meant to be loved unconditionally. The war's first victory had been won not through battle, but through an invitation. 7 years had passed since the first colliery children arrived on Earth. Dr. Sarah Shung Williams stood in the backyard of the Morrison family home in Vermont, watching something that would have been impossible to explain. To the Colliery Educational Authority.Z, E.P.H. Kara, now 19 and radiant with health, was teaching a group of human children to paint. Her silver skin caught the sunlight as she moved between her students, her voice warm with encouragement. Don't worry about making it perfect, she told 8-year-old Marcus, the same Marcus Henderson who had been taken from his parents 7 years ago. He had been returned the previous year, part of the first successful cultural exchange negotiations. Art is about feeling, not following rules. Sarah smiled, remembering the sullen, defeated child who had arrived on Earth. The colliery had considered Zefkira a failure because she asked too many questions, because she cried when others were hurt, because she created beautiful but illogical art during her designated study periods. The Morrison family had changed that. Tom Morrison, a former art teacher, and his wife Linda, a therapist, had given Zefkira something she'd never experienced: unconditional love. They celebrated her questions, encouraged her tears, and hung her illogical art on their walls. Dr. Chun Williams? Zefkira approached, her latest painting tucked under her arm. I wanted to show you something. The painting was extraordinary, a swirling galaxy of colors that seemed to move with their own life. At the center, two figures embraced, one human, one color-y, both glowing with the same inner light. It's beautiful, Sarah said, and meant it. What will you do with it? Zefkira's expression grew serious. I'm going home. To Colliery Prime. Next month. Sarah's heart skipped. They had all known this day would come. The 12 Colliery children, who had been part of the original exchange, were now adults, free to choose their own paths. Some had decided to remain on Earth, but others, like Zefkira, felt called to return to their birth world. Are you sure? You know it won't be easy. The Colliery Educational Authority still considers you a failed experiment. That's exactly why I have to go, Zefkira said. I've learned something here that they need to understand. Love isn't chaos. It's the most powerful force in the universe. And I'm going to show them. Over the following weeks, Sarah watched as similar scenes played out across Earth. Keth Miran, who had been raised by a family of musicians in New Orleans, was preparing to return with compositions that blended Colliery mathematical precision with human emotional expression. Vos Thara, adopted by a family of teachers in Kenya, was carrying educational theories that emphasized nurturing over discipline. Each of them was returning to Colliery space transformed, carrying something that would be impossible for the Colliery to ignore, proof that their defective children could become extraordinary under the right conditions. But the real surprise came when Sarah received a communication from instructor Keth Vanos himself. The alien's image appeared on her screen, but something was different. His usual rigid posture seemed softer somehow. Dr. Chun Williams, he said, his voice carrying an unfamiliar uncertainty. We have been observing the subjects who have returned to Colliery space. Their behavior patterns are unexpected. In what way? They demonstrate capabilities we did not anticipate. Creative problem-solving, emotional intelligence, leadership qualities that inspire rather than command. Most disturbing, they are influencing others. Young Colliery are beginning to question our educational methods. Sarah kept her expression neutral. Are you saying the experiment was successful? I am saying. Keth Vanos paused, and Sarah saw something she had never expected to see in a Colliery: doubt. I am saying that perhaps we have been wrong about the nature of proper development. The admission was staggering. For the first time in their recorded history, the Colliery were questioning their own methods. I would like to request additional cultural exchange opportunities, Keth Vanos continued. And I would like to observe human parenting methods firsthand. Sarah smiled, thinking of all the human children still in Colliery space, and all the Colliery children who could benefit from human love. I think that can be arranged. The fire was spreading, one heart at a time. Asterisk. A great amphitheater of Colliery Prime had never hosted an event like this. Zefkira stood at the center, no longer the defeated child who had been deemed defective by the educational authority. Her silver skin glowed with health and confidence, and her voice carried to every corner of the vast space. My name is Zefkira, she began, her words translated and broadcast across the Colliery Empire. I was raised by humans. I was taught that I matter not for what I achieve, but for who I am. Every child deserves this, including yours. In the audience, Instructor Keth Vanos sat beside his human counterpart, Ambassador Zara Okafor. The aliens. Transformation over the past 2 years had been remarkable. He had spent 6 months on Earth, living with different families, observing human child-rearing methods firsthand. What he had learned had shaken the foundations of everything he believed. When I was 8 years old, Zefkera continued, I was removed from the standard educational program because I asked too many questions, because I cried when I saw others in pain, because I created art that served no logical purpose. I was told I was broken, that my emotional responses were symptoms of inferior development. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. In Colliery society, such personal revelation was unprecedented. The humans who raised me taught me that my questions were valuable, that my tears showed compassion, that my art was beautiful precisely because it came from my heart rather than my mind. She gestured to the massive painting displayed behind her, the same galaxy painting she had shown Dr. Chun Williams, now reproduced on a scale that dominated the amphitheater. This is what love creates, she said. Not chaos, not weakness, but something so powerful it can transform entire civilizations. In the Imperial box, the Colliery High Council watched in silence. Over the past year, they had witnessed unprecedented changes in their society. Young Colliery were questioning authority, demanding emotional connection with their families, creating art and music that served no practical purpose, but brought joy. The changes had begun with the human-raised Colliery, but they had spread. Traditional Colliery parents were beginning to ask forbidden questions. What if love wasn't weakness? What if emotional connection actually strengthened their children rather than weakening them? I stand before you today not as a failure of your system, Zefkera continued, but as proof that there is another way. The humans didn't make me better by fixing what was broken. They made me better by showing me I was never broken at all. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Young Colliery throughout the amphitheater began to stand, their skin glowing brighter with each passing moment. The light spread through the crowd like a wave until the entire space was blazing with luminescence. But the real revelation came when Instructor Keth Vanos stood and walked to the center of the amphitheater. His appearance beside Zefkera sent shockwaves through the crowd. I am Keth Vanos, he said, his voice carrying the same authority it always had, but tempered now with something else: humility. I was the one who declared this young being defective. I was the one who removed human children from their families, believing we were saving them from emotional chaos. He turned to face the Imperial box. I was wrong. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. A member of the educational authority, one of the highest-ranking Colliery in the Empire, had publicly admitted error. I have lived among humans. Keth Vanos continued. I have observed their methods, experienced their approach to child development. What I learned challenged everything I believed about the nature of strength and weakness, about the purpose of education, about the value of emotional connection. He gestured to Zefkera. This young being is not defective. She is evolved. She represents what we could become if we had the courage to embrace love alongside logic. The crowd's luminescence grew even brighter. Throughout the amphitheater, families were embracing, parents were crying, children were laughing, all behaviors that had been discouraged for generations. The human children we took will be returned to their families, Keth Vanos announced, not as failures of our system, but as ambassadors of a new understanding. They will return changed, but not in the way we intended. They will return with both human emotional wisdom and Colliery intellectual discipline. They will be bridges between our peoples. As if summoned by his words, the main doors of the amphitheater opened. A group of young humans entered, led by Sarah Henderson, now 15, poised and glowing with an inner light that matched her Colliery teachers. Behind her came Tommy, now 18 and tall, carrying a musical instrument that was part human violin, part Colliery harmonic resonator. And behind him came Marcus, now 13, his arms full of paintings that showed the same swirling galaxies of color that had become Zephkira's signature. The Henderson children had been changed by their time on Colliery Prime, but not broken. They had learned discipline and logical thinking, but they had never lost their capacity for love, for creativity, for joy. They were living proof that the two approaches didn't have to be mutually exclusive. Sarah walked to the center of the amphitheater and embraced Zephkira. The sight of a human and Colliery child embracing a sister sent another wave of luminescence through the crowd. "We came here as strangers," Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly in the vast space. "We're leaving as family." In the years that followed, the transformation of Colliery society would be gradual but inexorable. The rigid educational authority would become the Collaborative Development Council. Colliery parents would learn to balance logic with love, discipline with compassion. Human families would continue to adopt Colliery children, and Colliery families would begin adopting human children. But the real victory was simpler and more profound. No child, human or Colliery, would ever again be told they were defective for asking questions, for feeling deeply, for creating beauty in an illogical world. War had ended not with the defeat of the Colliery, but with their transformation. Humanity had brought fire, not the destructive flame of war, but the warm, nurturing fire of home. And in that fire, both species had found something they had never expected: the strength that comes from love, the wisdom that comes from compassion, and the courage that comes from believing that every child, no matter how different, deserves to be cherished for exactly who they are. The quiet burning had become a brilliant flame, lighting the way to a future where love truly was the most powerful force in the universe. Asterisk.